Random House Audio presents The Bushes, Portrait of a Dynasty by Peter Schweizer and Rochelle Schweizer. Read for you by Harry Chase. Introduction. On election night, November 1994, Governor-elect George W. was beaming in his hotel suite in Houston. 1,400 miles to the east, younger brother Jeb was sitting dejectedly in his hotel suite in Miami. Both men had decided to run for governor of their respective states of Texas and Florida in January 1993. They had not really consulted each other or coordinated their plans. Maybe the Kennedys handle this part of the job better than we do, Jeb Bush noted, but it's just too complicated. Conventional wisdom in the family had it that Jebby would win and W would go down in defeat. Jebby was, after all, the serious one, the one who had been meticulously planning to run for office for more than a decade, the one who really knew his stuff, and the one who would drop everything whenever his father needed him. And if he won the governorship, he would probably run for president in 2000. And his older brother? Well, W was smart and shrewd, but he was also the rebel, edgy and unpredictable. Only a few years earlier, Marvin Bush, a younger brother, had described his oldest sibling as the family clown. But on that election night, when the tallies came in, the results were stunning to most in the family. Jeb was going down to defeat in Florida, and W was beating Ann Richards big. When W was finally over the top and Richards had conceded, he got a phone call in his hotel suite. It was his father. Aunt Nancy Ellis was standing nearby as W chatted with his dad. When he hung up the phone, a disappointed W simply shook his head. Almost the entire conversation had apparently been about Jeb's loss, with barely a mention of his win. His aunt listened as he said, "Why do you feel bad about Jeb? Why don't you feel good about me?" A little more than 6 years later, 274 members of the extended Bush family converged on the nation's capital. The backgrounds of those family members covered a broad spectrum: young and old, Easterner and Midwesterner, partisan and apolitical, conservative and liberal. 2 days later, many of them stood on the podium of the west lawn of the Capitol building as George W. Bush took the oath of office. The remarkable rise of the eldest son, the rebel, was now complete. The family's political fortunes, expected to be carried by Jeb, were instead now on his older brother's shoulders. As in all things, it's always good to be the winner, said cousin John Ellis. So they saddled up with old George W. There can be little question that the Bushes are now the most successful political family in American history. To the extent that the family has been studied at all, it has emerged as a caricature. New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd has compared the Bushes with a sinister mafia clan, while at the same time declaring that they are a boring group of cutouts from a Brooks Brothers catalog. Why the caricature? Mystery often invites these kinds of labels. The simple fact is, members of the Bush family don't like to talk about themselves. The Bushes consider self-focus and self-analysis to be dangerously close to self-centeredness. The Bushes also have a disinterest in publicity because they consider themselves to be the un-Kennedys. But the Bushes also differ from other prominent families in their intense sense of loyalty. The Kennedys, for example, cultivated close relationships with a host of advisors and friends and made them, as Gary Wills has put it, honorary Kennedys. The Bushes have no such appendages. Longtime family friends note that they possess a strong tribal sense, a dynastic instinct that drives them. They are a clan, pure and simple, says Fitzgerald Bemis, a family friend of more than 60 years who has known 4 generations of Bushes. They think like a clan and act like a clan. Loyalty is very important, and so is their sense of heritage. Everyone is independent, but also part of the whole. In early 1999, we began interviewing family members for this book. We spoke with 3 generations of the family. Some are at the center of the family's rise to power, including former President George H.W. Bush, and Florida Governor Jeb Bush. Others are part of the family's inner circle. Still others are members of the extended family and longtime friends who have been deeply involved in the family's activities. What follows is the untold story of the remarkable rise of America's most powerful family. Part 1. Rise, 1880 to 1972. Chapter 1. Iron. For an ambitious and industrious young man just before the turn of the 20th century, there were few better places to be than Columbus, Ohio. Next to the large coal-producing areas of Ohio, Columbus was not Cincinnati or Cleveland, with their tall buildings and keen sense of culture. But situated at the center of the great highways of commerce, it was well poised to explode into prominence. Arriving by train from New Jersey, a tall, slender man named Samuel P. Bush saw the opportunity to be had in the great American Midwest. Not wanting to become an Episcopalian minister like his father, S.P., as he was known, had balked at attending prestigious Yale University, the college of both his father and grandfather. Instead, he had enrolled at the less regal Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey. Shortly after leaving Stevens, S.P. joined the Pennsylvania Railroad and headed for the great railroad operations of the Midwest. In 1894, S.P. fell in love with and married a local Columbus woman, Flora Sheldon, the daughter of a dry goods merchant and bank officer. Her family was not particularly wealthy, but her pedigree was pure. One ancestor was Robert Livingston, the Puritan dissenter who had left Scotland after the Stuart Restoration and arrived in America in 1673. S.P. applied himself diligently at the railroad, keeping accurate financial records and supplying plenty of suggestions to cut costs and boost profits. But the Pennsylvania Railroad was a massive company with more than 110,000 employees. Rising through the ranks would be a long, arduous process. So, when he was offered a job at Buckeye Malleable Iron and Coupler Company, later renamed Buckeye Steel, in Columbus, Ohio, S.P. seized the opportunity. Buckeye was far from a profitable venture when S.P. joined the company. Founded in 1894 by Colonel W.F. Goodspeed, the company produced automatic couplers that joined railroad cars together. Instrumental in raising capital for Buckeye Steel was Cleveland-based financier Franklin Rockefeller, younger brother of John D. S.P. would grow to have a complex and at times awkward relationship with him, but it would serve the family well over the next century. Almost immediately after his arrival at Buckeye, S.P. began working feverishly to turn the firm around. Producing couplers was dirty and dangerous work, but S.P. was often on the plant floor, keeping things moving and giving orders. Worker Albert Stock remembers S.P. as a snorter. Everyone knew when he was around. When he issued orders, boy, it went. S.P.'s passions went beyond home and work. During his time at Stevens, he had been introduced to a strange new game. On the campus of Ohio State University, young men were gathering on a dusty field to play football. S.P. coached with the Buckeye team for 5 years, during which time it never had a winning season. But for S.P., that mattered little. For S.P., sports was the great equalizer, offering universal rules, fair play, and measurable performance. The Buckeye track team and other sporting groups were also racially integrated, a radical idea in turn-of-the-century America. S.P. and Flora had 4 children. Prescott, as the oldest, was expected to keep his siblings in line. S.P. insisted that the boys attend public school rather than one of the elite private schools in and around Columbus. The Douglas School in one of Columbus's middle-class neighborhoods was an amalgamation of students from all sorts of backgrounds. It didn't matter who your father was or what he did. It only mattered if you could hit and field. Young Press was particularly adept at both. In 1907, Rockefeller saw that Buckeye was in trouble, so he turned the company over to young S.P. Bush. He would run it for the next 20 years. With his new role as company president,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?